Welcome, everyone. I'm Dean Hybl. I'm the Executive Director of 10 at the Top, and I appreciate you being with us for this virtual listening tour call in Abbeville County. We are doing these calls in our 7, what we're calling the non-urban counties, all the counties except for Greenville, Spartanburg, and Anderson. This is the 6th of the 7. We have Pickens County tomorrow, and then we will be done in terms of the listening tour, and our intent after that is to take the feedback we've heard from all of you and the folks in the other counties and see where there's synergy, where there's opportunity, where there's concerns that we can work on collaboratively or identify opportunities to work on as a region, or where there are opportunities that in our role as a regional connector, we can work with you all to connect you and others to each other from across the upstate region. So we're going to start this with, let me first introduce, I've got a number of our team with us who are going to ask specific questions that we've been using throughout this process. We have Erin Ouzts, who is our coordinator of entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurial ecosystem. She'll be asking some questions around economic development and entrepreneurship. Then we have Michael Hildebrand, who is the director of the Upstate Mobility Alliance, who will ask some questions around infrastructure. Then Justine Allen is our program and events coordinator, and she is going to ask some questions around social service needs, healthcare, education, things of that nature. And then Sharon Purvis, who is our outreach coordinator, is going to wrap us up with some final questions. So I want to start before we get into, and the purpose of this is to hear from you. So we appreciate all of you being on. We're going to ask you to, for most of the time, unmute yourself or make sure you're ready to answer some various questions, and we'll go from there. We're going to start with some polling. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll, and you can see, and I'll read the questions. There are 6 of them. They're all basically similar with a different issue for each one or stakeholder area. The first question is, when it comes to social services and healthcare in Abbeville County, how do you feel your community's personal well-being needs have been met? And obviously this is as it relates to COVID-19 and the things that have been happening here in the last 2 to 3 months. The second question is, within your county, how do you feel the needs? Sorry, my screen disappeared. Within your county, how do you feel the needs of your manufacturers and other larger employers have been met? And each one, I should say, 1 is not at all met and 10 is met at on all levels. Number 3, within your county, how do you feel the needs of your restaurants and retail stores have been met? Number 4, the needs of your small businesses and entrepreneurs, your non-chain or franchise businesses. Number 5 is your education, colleges, universities, K-12 system. And then the last one is local and county governments. And as you're going through those, you'll need to answer each one. On the far right, you should be able to scroll down, and then after you've answered all of them, you can submit. And so I will give you a couple minutes here to go ahead and give your answers, and then we'll review those before we get started. They'll help us as we're framing the feedback from each county, and then also as our folks ask questions here throughout this session. So I'm seeing some familiar faces. Hi, Susan. Hi, Paul. And Emily, I think you're on the tour again. We're glad to have you. I see Mike and Tim's names, if not faces. Stephen, great to see you. Appreciate you being with us. Michael Hildebrand and I are actually in Greenwood. We had a great lunch today with our friends at the Greenwood Chamber, and now we're at the Partnership Alliance using their Wi-Fi. So we appreciate our friends here in Greenwood. Lee Logan, great to see you. We have not had a chance to connect for a while, so it's great to see you and hopefully to hear from you in a minute. Right now I have 5 responses from folks. We should have, based on what I'm seeing number-wise, probably 8 or 9, maybe 7. So we'll give maybe a time for a couple more seconds. Rick Green, great to have you here, and Mike Clary as well.
Dean, this is Lee Logan. Can you hear me?
I can, Lee, yes.
Okay.
Are you able to see the polling?
Yeah, I've just gotten started.
Okay, good. We'll give you a minute here to do that. There are 6 of the questions. I think after you wrap up, we might be just about done with folks. Mike, are you on where you can see the questions?
I am. I've already submitted it.
Okay, good. And everybody else? Susan, you guys are all good? Stephen? Okay, I think the 7 is probably where we are number-wise. So I'm going to go ahead and end the polling and then share the results so you guys can see it along with me. So first question around social services and healthcare. We're definitely in the upper half, which is good. 3 responses at 9, and then 1 each from 5 to 8. So we'll hear a little bit more about that as we move forward, but certainly a positive outcome, at least in terms of the perception there. The next one around manufacturers and larger employers, and this one is also very strong, all 7 and 8. And Stephen, will ask for some feedback from you around that here in a few minutes, but I'm sure that's due to y'all's continued engagement with folks. Restaurants and retail stores, you guys are actually probably a little bit higher than we've seen from some of the other counties. We usually see a 2 or 3 score there. Y'all are right in the middle, 5, 6, and 7. One of the things I've said for the 10 years I've lived here is I am always amazed at how many great places there are to eat in Abbeville. And so hopefully all of your businesses are able to continue their services and things, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. The local non-chain small businesses and entrepreneurs, right in the middle, 4, 5, 6, and 7 for most of those. 6 being 5 and 6 being the most. So right there in the middle, which is not totally a surprise given that the challenges is related to businesses opening, and then also to people coming in and out of stores. So we'll hear a little bit more from you all, some feedback about those numbers. Erin will ask some questions about that in a minute. Then the schools, colleges, universities, right in the middle there at a 5 for most everybody, with a 6 and 7, a couple 7s thrown in. So they're in the middle. And then the governments, it looks like we're very consistent with 7s in the middle, and then 2 right above and right below, 1 each for 5 and 6, and 1 each for 8 and 9. So thank you for this feedback. We will be including this in the follow-up, and this will help as Erin and Michael and the others ask some questions here in a few minutes. So before we do that, I have a couple quick questions to ask everyone. And the first one has to do with collaborations. Have you all, since COVID-19 started, what have you guys done across the county, whether within the cities or collectively as a county? Have you created a task force, or have you worked through the United Way or through the county office, or what has been the approaches you guys have taken to engage with each other there in the county? And I'll leave that open for anyone. And again, if you want to be unmuted, please try to unmute yourself and let me know. And then I will also, you can in the chat, let me know that you would like to be included. So let's see, let me start maybe with Stephen and Tim, if you guys want to give some feedback on that. Tim, can you hear me? Okay, that was the wrong choice.
Yeah, so Dean, I'll just start a little bit.
Mike, okay. Oh, Stephen. Okay, perfect.
Just going through some things we've noticed, you know, as being a rural community, really not having so much an organization. But I think our lines of communications, I can say, with the city has been really good. I know Mike's on this call, and we talk about once a week what he's seeing on his side and what I'm seeing on that side, and really just making sure we're on the same page and really utilizing the information. With SBA was done really good. Ben Calhoun did a really good job of getting us information that we needed. I thought some of the questions on the triple P, especially with our smaller manufacturers, were a little bit of a challenge, just because there were some, because how they ran the money through the banks, there were some issues where some people bank with a larger banks. It was a little bit more difficult than people who bank with smaller regional or local banks. We saw a big positive in regional banks and local banks really working with our small business.
Good. Thank you, Stephen. How about, I'm going to ask Rick Green if you're available. What role there has the COG played with the local communities? Rick?
As of right now, I think we're still waiting to get a lot of direction from federal and state. We know that there's money that's coming down from the federal government. It's coming down to the different resources that we usually work with: EDA, Economic Development Administration, Community Development Block Grants. All those are going to be available, but there's a lot of rulemaking that's going to have to occur and happen between now and whenever those deadlines happen with grant applications. So we're just waiting to hear. We've got lots of projects just from regular meetings and regular contacts with our county partners there. So we know some things that need to be done. We're ready when they are going to be done, and just waiting for the word to go right now.
Great. Meg and Emily, from especially a social service standpoint and working with the hospital and things, if you guys could kind of share what kind of collaborations have you all had engaging there in Abbeville?
And I'm sure Meg will say this then too. So United Way, we work with the Be Healthy Abbeville Coalition, and they've really taken the lead as far as social services to keep everybody informed. Amanda Morgan was with the hospital, so she keeps us connected with the Abbeville Area Medical Center, and then United Christian Ministries and other organizations who work inside of Abbeville or within the county. And then on Friday, she asks for updates, and Monday she sends out a weekly email to keep us informed. It didn't used to be weekly, and now it is weekly, and it's been very, very helpful.
Good. Meg, anything to add?
We have been working very closely with our area hospitals, especially with the COVID event going on. Right now we have a mobile COVID testing clinic going on as we speak, and they have hit 400 participants as of like 2 minutes ago. So we collaborated with DHEC. We're working closely, obviously, with EMS, with the city, with the county. It really has been a truly amazing group that has pulled together to keep our community very safe.
Great. Before we move on that, Mike Clary or Tim Hall, anything you guys want to add?
Sure. I would definitely go with Stephen and Meg's thoughts on that. You know, there's not a overarching, I would say, task force agency, but we've definitely all stayed in communication, at least on a weekly basis, and we're trying to let every agency sort of lead the charge in their specific service area.
Great. Lee, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was going to make a comment and expand a little bit on what I participated in on the other end of what Meg was talking about with regard to the hospital's help in Abbeville County. We had the privilege the other night of inviting one of the doctors from Abbeville Hospital who's sort of coordinating their effort to join the first 30 minutes of our WCTEL board meeting. And he was sharing with us the plans for this COVID testing they're doing today to try to get 1,000 people to kind of get a baseline. And he went on to talk about the virus and its specificity in Abbeville County. And I was tremendously impressed with what he was commenting on and the information that he shared and how relevant it was to the plans we have to make right here in this region, and realizing that South Carolina has a wide diversity of counties in it and not one size fits all. And one comment stuck out in my mind. He's doing this in connection with DHEC. Meg may have mentioned that, but he said Abbeville County is not a destination county, and that may hurt some of our feelings. We're trying to be as much of a destination county as we can be, and I think there's been success in that, but we aren't the kind of county where 10,000 people are going to come visit us every day trying to go to the beach or whatever it is.
Right.
But I do want to send a note of thanks out to the Abbeville Hospital. They seem to me to be taking on the role of informing those of us in Abbeville County with what's going on and what's specific to us. And this testing of 1,000 people today will give them a baseline so that they begin to tell us a little more specific information. And I thought that was tremendously important. And, you know, I don't know if that would be applicable across every county in South Carolina, but it was very helpful for the WCTEL Board of Directors and employees to help make plans that are specific to us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that. I think having a local hospital is definitely a positive for a community, and a lot of, unfortunately, rural communities don't have their own local systems anymore. And so, you know, maybe that's one of the pieces you can see there, Lee, is the benefit because of that. Paul Bell, did you have a comment?
Yes, I wanted to comment on an initiative between Erskine College, US Family Medicine, Abbeville Hospital, and Self Regional as we plan for reopening in the fall. We have a task force here. It's headed up by one of our professors who also happens to be a medical doctor. And we are joining forces with those medical providers for a number of things. I think screening of our students when they come back, testing, how do we come back safely? And then also we're hoping that what can come out of that is some very helpful research for those medical facilities that could possibly be published. And it will be a win-win for them as well as for Erskine. And so that's been a nice effort and very congenial, of course, and didn't have to twist anybody's arms to ask them to be part of it.
Good. Oh, very, very good information. And I'm sure we will talk more about collaborations as we move on, but Erin, I'm going to turn it over to you to ask some questions about economic development and entrepreneurs.
Okay, Dean, thank you very much. And it's nice to see so many of you and people that I talk on the phone with, and now see them in person a little bit, and other folks that I've been seeing every week on all these talks. But I'm going to, y'all filled out the survey or the poll based on what you think now, that I'm going to step back and ask you about where you thought your businesses were health-wise prior to COVID-19. I mean, were y'all healthy? Were you growing? Were you declining? Were you, you know, how do you feel like your businesses were doing prior to all of this? Mike, Stephen?
Yeah, well,
Start out with that one.
About local. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess as far as like the small businesses in the city, you know, I did feel like we had a good bit of momentum going before all this hit, and with the Opera House and all the events that we're doing, and it did sort of stop all of a sudden, just like everything did everywhere. As far as how that's affected businesses here, I mean, certainly restaurants are down, and you know, all businesses have been impacted by this in one way or another. You know, as far as I know, we haven't had any businesses permanently closed that I'm aware of. At this point, besides one or two restaurants, every business that did close temporarily has reopened.
Very good.
And we actually added, I think, 2 new businesses downtown that weren't here pre-COVID-19. So we're definitely excited about that. Probably the biggest gap that I noticed just overall throughout this is that, you know, what the federal government may think about in terms of small business when they develop these programs as being less than 500 employees. And, you know, in a smaller rural community, 500 employees is a large business.
Mm-hmm.
Most of our small businesses, you know, they may have 1 to, you know, 15 employees, and a lot of the programs seem to be, you know, geared toward a little bit larger businesses than that, or maybe a little more difficult for that truly small business to, I guess, navigate through. And Stephen, did you have anything to add on your end?
Yeah, also, I felt like that our larger retailer and industries were doing really well. Out of our large 3, 1 took a pretty good hit because they're in the automotive industry, and with the big 3 being shut down, that really slowed down. And I want to echo a little bit what Mike said. You know, I know Susan's on this call too with the PPP rolled out. I think some of the what we consider a bigger fish grabbed some of those funds very easily and very quickly, and some of our smaller manufacturers it was really tough on them. So I will say that going through the PPP, and I'm glad that the feds did come out and kind of reassess what was going to be forgiven, because I know, talking to a few bankers, there were a couple of these small industries and small businesses that really were concerned that there was going to be some type of clawback and how they're going to do that. So I think they did a good job of getting that information out. But overall, several of our industries has been business as usual, and a lot of them were scared they were going to be shut down by the federal government. I had one of our largest industries really was on the front end of having their attorneys to start working on information, how they were going to be considered essential. So I'll say that.
Okay, so regarding PPP and the challenges that y'all are talking about, what kind of organizations or groups were available to help your businesses kind of overcome those hurdles?
I would just say, as I said earlier, I think the biggest people we saw was some of our regional banks and some of our local banks. I'm not going to call some of the larger banks, but I had one industry were crippled because they were at the bottom of the totem pole. They're, you know, businesses, you know, $10, $15 million a year, and they just got no response from their banks. And we had to try to connect them to other regional and local banks. But by then, you know, they were going to take care of their customers first, and all that. They were large enough where it just become really tough for the regional or local banks to take that on. So I saw that as a big hurdle. I don't know if maybe the next time, or if we had a situation where we would not run this possibly through a bank. I don't know if SBA, I don't know how that would work, but some of those, it just really was very tough. I'd say that.
Okay, Susan, looks like you.
Yeah, it has been really, really tough. Of course, you know, I live in Abbeville County, and every single one of these people on this call are not only just dear friends, but I consider family. So I'm very, very proud of Abbeville and making it through this hurdle. It has been really tough. Now that monies have been distributed, I can tell you the calls on my end have slowed down. And I do think that Abbeville's done exceptionally well for being a smaller community in getting through those hurdles. But, you know, if there's a round 2 of this, you know, I think we'll be better prepared as a country to be, you know, just like I say, a little bit more prepared to cross those, jump those hurdles if that comes. But again, hats off to everybody on the call. I had some pretty sleepless nights there, worried about some of my friends and their small businesses, and Abbeville Hospital's been phenomenal. In fact, I went today and got tested myself. I just wanted to be able to say I did it and know what other people are going through. I will tell you, it is not fun. But thank you to Abbeville Hospital for doing that as well.
Good. All right, Susan, thank you. David, I see that, David Darty, I see you're on the call. Do you want to add anything here about resources that are available? He's still on mute. Okay, yes. David? No, okay. Mike Cleary, I know you've been working on some things.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so as far, I guess going back to the question, the SBDC has been absolutely wonderful, and I know Stephen mentioned Ben Calhoun earlier. I know they've been swamped throughout everything, but they've certainly tried to offer all the assistance that they could, and I guess to further echo Stephen's thoughts, our local banks especially have been very helpful in helping small businesses navigate throughout all this. And yeah, on my end, one thing I've been working on with Erin is kind of looking at Abbeville's entrepreneurial ecosystem and really what that means and what resources that we do have. And I do think that as far as that specific role of assisting businesses through something like this, the SBDC is probably the primary resource provider in that area. I know I try to help some, and I know Stephen does as well, but that's probably the main one.
Okay, good. Ben's not on the call, but we all know how hard he works. So going forward, how quickly do you think your businesses will recover? You've already kind of referred to this a little bit, but do you think it will be within the year, 2 years? What do you think?
Well, I would just say I've been out on the phone with a couple of our smaller industries who provide some goods. I don't want to go into details, but they're already starting to see a little bit of a pickup. So
okay.
I feel like, I think the fall, but it's just different sectors that I think will be really affected of what they provide. But one of them's already told me they're starting to see their business pick up.
Okay. All right.
Erin, if we could kind of go back and make sure we hear as it relates to the challenges as it with PPP and other things about whether the businesses had their finances and things in place, because that's something we've heard in many of the counties. In fact, when at lunch with David today, we were talking about that as well.
Okay, good. And maybe Susan or someone can talk to that. We've heard that one of the challenges is that the businesses did not have their books in order. So in order to get the loans, they had to go back and reconstruct kind of the business of the business. What did y'all see and how did you help with that?
I know from our office, it did, that we had a lot of the systems that everybody was trying to get on, and so they would crash, and some of these smaller businesses didn't have access to what some of the larger businesses had, and so it did, getting those monies out was really difficult for a lot of the smaller businesses. They were just bleeding. They were just absolutely bleeding until that money came through. And so I know our office had to really kind of step up and help navigate some of them through that system. I know, we were talking about the banks. Andy Timmerman at Abbeville First, really had his hands full for a while trying to, help everybody through this. It was just a very, very difficult time. And, like I say, a lot of the systems, it was kind of out of our hands, would just be overloaded. And, it was just difficult for people to get through. But again, I'm hoping this next time around we'll be better prepared and it won't be it won't be quite so difficult.
Okay, all right, Susan, thank you. David, I think that you're unmuted now. If you, I know you always have wonderful things to share, so please give it, we'd love to hear from you.
Okay, maybe not.
I would like to make one suggestion.
Okay.
That I saw, and that nobody wants the Monday morning quarterback, because when we're in the middle of a battle.
Okay, I'll call back. All right, call you back shortly.
Stephen, go ahead. Sorry.
But anyway, in the middle of the battle, one thing I think that kind of hindered the PPP, and I think they've corrected this for the second round, was the verbiage that basically said the uncertainty caused by COVID-19. I've heard, and I actually saw a couple of businesses that took, I wouldn't say take advantage, but they utilized PPP when they probably would not, they would have been okay. Does that make sense? And that's where I think Susan talked about that flood where everybody was panicking and they were trying to get in the system. And some of them were like, I understand that there's some uncertainty there, but this company over here really, really should take priority than your company, because you're still operating, you're still doing business. And, and at the end of this thing, if I was in their shoes, I would have been the same way. But that's one thing. And I think, Susan, I think this second round is going to have a little bit more structure. And I'm not Monday morning quarterback. I know when we're in a.
No, and I totally agree, Stephen. It's the same with, you saw, there were some businesses that just got so much money, and they did end up giving it back. But, again, I think they will be looking at that a little bit more closely as to the ones that really, truly do need it. I think it's the same with the stimulus package as well. People got that didn't necessarily need it. So it does need to be, they're definitely taking the steps already to start looking at making sure that things are done a little bit differently moving forward. So I totally agree.
Well, good. Thanks to all of you. We need to move on to Michael Hildebrand now to talk about some infrastructure questions. So Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Erin. I appreciate it. So first, I want to talk about some of the people that are in more of the lower paying service jobs. And have they had any issues with access to transportation? And has that been an issue in your community?
From the 211 standpoint, I was just reviewing the 211 changes from March and April of this year to last year, and there was no increase in Abbeville County for transportation calls, but I figured they already know that there's no one really to call, so I don't imagine those numbers would go up during this time. I don't really feel like COVID has affected it.
Because transportation is typically an issue already. Is that kind of your point?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have any perspective on that?
I think
I would agree with that. I mean, I'm not aware of any heightened, issues, but there really just is no transportation mechanism here anyway. So if they did have issues, there would be no one to really call. I mean, with a few exceptions.
So as we have more people that are looking to go back to work, what are some of those fundamental challenges that your community is trying to deal with, or what kind of barriers are they coming up against?
I imagine it would be the same kind of issues in Greenwood. It's here are the manufacturing jobs over here in the industrial area on this side of town, and the people who are needing those jobs here, and how do we get them from here to there? That is kind of our issue.
Rick, did you have a comment?
I was just going to say transit is an issue all across the board in most of our region. Getting people to work is an issue. Getting people to doctor's appointments, to hospitals, all of that is a big issue. It's not always seen as an issue by a lot of people for a variety of reasons, but as was stated earlier, there is really no system there to officially get everybody around. There are certain agencies that have their own van that take their own people back and forth to to where they need to go, but there's not a public option. And that's something that's a weakness, not only in Abbeville, but across Greenwood, Saluda, and Lawrence County as well. It's something that's desperately needed.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go and kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about broadband internet. I believe that at one point, Abbeville did a really good job and was very proactive around internet and broadband. Has that been an issue for your community during COVID? You know, access to internet or issues with broadband?
I'm not aware of any major issues. I do know that West Carolina definitely stepped up big, and they placed hotspots all around the county for students to use that were doing homeschooling during the time, and really just for anyone to use free of charge. So I would hope that if there were any issues, those sites were advertised well enough to help offset some of that.
Paul, I think I saw you and Emily both kind of nodding your head that Abbeville at least has that kind of under control.
We have this is Lee Logan. We do have a rather robust internet availability throughout Abbeville and McCormick and the southern Anderson County, and now with the expansion in Greenwood and Newberry, those things are available. But that doesn't mean just because it's available that household is hooked up to the internet. We pass by many homes where they're either not able to afford it or they don't see the value of it. And we're trying to determine right now how many of those homes have children in them that are trying to participate in school responsibilities and can't. We think there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 4,700 homes in our service area that the internet passes by that house, but it's not, they have not taken advantage of hooking up to it. And we're trying to determine, now they may have an internet with somebody else, but they don't have it with West Carolina Tel. So we're working with the school district to try to determine what we can do as they open back up to make that service available, either paid by the school district or paid from some other source at the lowest possible price. And I've heard some discussions of $25, but that's still being worked on so that those children can have an opportunity. And this would include the charter school children, the homeschool children, the children that go to the Mennonite schools, whatever school that they might go to, so that, and we're working also with the school district so that the tablet that child has can only be used for school purposes. There's no point in taking it away from the child and trying to watch Netflix on it. We're trying to figure out the engineering of how to do that. So I think there's been a good bit of activity to try to, not only we provided, I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 23 hotspots free. And we waived the cost for upgrading your internet if you had internet, but it was way too slow for you to get your work done. That was true for businesses, people from working at home. All they had to do was call us up, and for 60 days, we waived the price in increasing your speed so that they could participate in their schoolwork or business or whatever at a faster rate. So there are a number of things that are being done, but there's a lot more that's got to be done if we're going to be able to go into the next school year with having children that have the opportunity to participate on the same level as every other child in the county.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good insight. So speaking of schools, we'll turn over to Justine now, who will talk more about the social issues.
Thank you. That was so wonderful to hear, Lee, that you're being so proactive with determining which homes do have Wi-Fi and doing something about trying to figure out how to make that better. So we heard one of the questions I was going to ask is what was done for the kids as they were out of school and needed to get online. So I heard what you said. In Greenville County, they had buses that went out with Wi-Fi. Does anyone know if there, you would, I'm assuming, any buses that went out so that people could go access the hotspot and download materials or anything like that?
We didn't, I don't think they were able to, they set that up. I don't think they set it up through the buses, but there was a rather robust provision of free Wi-Fi in so many sections throughout our 3 counties that hopefully it didn't present a problem to get yourself to one of those spots.
That's great.
And we monitored how many people used it, and it was amazing to see where the children were going to use it, and we could figure out that it was pretty well available to them if they wanted it. Now that doesn't mean they're still in a better way, and I think this way to make the provision available in their own home is the best long-term solution.
Right. I know we don't have any school district people online, but anecdotally, those of you that might have kids, was there a food service need that was met during the school time?
They did set up a emergency food lunch program. I think at first it was at a smaller number of schools, and then they expanded it throughout the different areas in the county, so you could pick up at an elementary school or at this middle school and set that up.
Great. Do you know if that will be continuing through the summer or any form of that by chance?
I saw something on Abbeville on Be Healthy for the Meals to Go program where the meals are delivered, but I'm not sure as far as the school district. I don't have that information yet.
It's a little early. So what about seniors, and what specific efforts have been made to support seniors during the pandemic, and what results and feedback have you received?
I will say one thing, the city and our co-op, I know the graduating seniors I thought was really good. I know it's a little bit, but just really highlighting their graduation, I thought with the banners was a really good thing they did. I know saw those all throughout the 3 communities. So I will say I commend them highly for that.
Cool. Moving on to a different social sector, what about senior citizens? Was there a senior citizen? I think, Emily, you've talked about that in the other counties too. Mm-hmm. Food service and anything else that services were provided for senior citizens?
Well, of course, internet is an issue. And one of the reasons, like he said, is lack of interest, scared of it. But that has put them behind because so many things have gone virtual. So addressing not only senior internet, but maybe how to train them, how to get them the technology and them not be scared of it. We started where people could call the United Way and we could register them for the senior food voucher program. We did take calls for Abbeville, McCormick, and Saluda as well. So only 7 Abbeville seniors were assisted out of like the 110, but that was still 7 seniors who got that voucher with our assistance. And then with the Food and Hunger Alliance, we're including Greenwood and Abbeville counties as our 2 focus areas. So as we can keep bringing money in for food, we'll keep helping the organizations that are dealing with that. Specifically UCMAC, that is the biggest food pantry in the area and has many services that they also provide, but definitely the food pantry.
Great, thank you. And lastly, are there any categories in your community of people who you would think might have fallen through the cracks in the last couple months? This came up, one of our other counties, college students. We have Erskine here, right? So college students who were unable to get out or get home or get back.
At Erskine, we had a number of students who were not able to go home because they were from other countries. We have, I think, 2 who are still on campus right now. I talked to one yesterday, he's from India. And as soon as India opens up again, he will be going home. Another is from South America, and she's caught in the middle of documentation issues. She needs to go home to renew her papers, but she can't go home because her country is closed. she will be spending the summer here, and Erskine is providing housing for her. She also has a job on campus, and we've had an offer of someone in a nearby town taking her in to their home if she wants. So most of our students have been taken care of in that regard. We also started a special fund for students whose families might be experiencing exceptional financial hardships because of the pandemic. By and large, the students were well provided for.
Great, thank you.
Justine, if I could maybe ask Meg a question, because a lot of times in our rural communities, the hospitals become a place that people go if they need, food or other services that, in other communities, they may go to other places for. Have you guys seen that in some realm where the hospital has had to play a role of helping connect people, seniors or others, with other services because the hospital is the place that they've kind of known or gone to get help?
I don't think so. I have not heard that we've had a lot of requests like that. I know we have a very active United community, UC-MAC United. Help me, y'all. The
United
Abbeville
Christian Ministries. Yeah.
Of Abbeville. Yes. Thank you, Susan. Thank you. It's been a long, hot day. And many of our physicians work at that clinic. So, and also, a lot of our churches, there's a lot of outreach in our small community. And I know Amanda Morgan, who's our community, she works with the Be Well Abbeville group. She has been able to work with that group to also help get the word out about different resources. But I don't think we've seen an influx of requests like that.
Good. Well, in communities where people have where there's structure and where in the past they've kind of known where to go, you'll tend to have less of that. So I think that's a positive reflection on the work that you guys had done prior to the pandemic. So,
absolutely.
Justine, if you've got anything else to wrap up.
The only other thing I was going to say is one of the things that's missing, I think, is that there are resources in Abbeville, but 211 is a little bit underutilized in Abbeville, and there are agencies in Greenwood who serve Abbeville County, and so they're maybe not they're only tapping into what's right there in the community, but if they called 211, they might have a few other opportunities for assistance, for utility, for rent, for food, those sorts of things.
Okay. Thank you. I think we'll pass it over to Sharon for some follow-up questions.
Doing the unmute thing. A couple of questions. Are there any things that you have seen in other communities that you think would be helpful to you in Abbeville as far as services or what's the word I'm looking for? Resources.
Programs or initiatives.
Programs and resources and initiatives that you would like to see in Abbeville that you've seen other places? I'm going to call on people if you don't answer.
Sharon, I know this is, I've got a 3 o'clock I got to jump off. I did want to ask one question.
Mm-hmm.
We're going through the census right now, and we know how important that is to how it's being recorded. And I talked to Lanny Kay about this, and our numbers are really down from where we're reporting. And I don't know, how do they, does anyone know how they report the census with Erskine, with those students being gone? Because Lanny was explaining to me that we usually get to count those students. And that's very important in the due west area because, of how, with granting and, recruiting retail. Can anybody speak to that a little bit?
The census, when you complete it, it asks where you were on April 1st on Census Day. So if they were to read the directions correctly, the parents should be able to read that, oh, their kid, where they have been, those sorts of issues. So we are dealing with that, but they have told us that if you call the census to complete it, that they should be able to answer those questions for you. And then Mr. Bell, I'm sure you know the answer to the Erskine, or how the Erskine students were counted, because Lander had a plan too, but then what kind of thing. So that's totally understandable.
I'm afraid I don't have an answer to that. I'm not in that loop. I'm happy to find out.
And Stephen, I will say that next week in our guest articles that we've been doing, we're going to have one on the census from some people who have more answers than I do. So keep your eye out for that.
Thank
But
you.
I think, Stephen, that is a really good point, and thank you. I know you've got to run here in a minute, but the census is so critical to all our communities, but especially to the rural areas. And I think across the state, the last I heard, the numbers were down a little bit from what was expected at this point. I know they've got strategies, and I'm sure United Way is playing a role in that to do outreach, but I do think it's going to be critical in the next couple of months for every entity that has an opportunity to make sure that people have completed the census numbers in all of our counties, because that is going to be really important. And as Sharon alluded to, we're going to continue to provide some information, but I think the local organizations will also play a very big role in that.
But yeah, the young people, the college students, and the young folks who have just moved out from their parents' homes, those are that's what I mean. I have one of those, and I keep telling him to fill out the census. And I have heard from United Way folks and other people who were involved in this that the young college students and recent graduates and kids who are living with a bunch of roommates, that's an issue. They're trying to reach those young folks. So, but yeah, keep your eyes out. We will have an article next week on that.
Thank you.
So going back, like pre-COVID, do you have any initiatives that you were working on that have kind of been put on the back burner that that you kind of need to jumpstart a bit as we move into the recovery phase? I think this person might.
I can speak for the city. A lot of what our downtown economic activity is based off is tourism, and the Opera House here and events. And we had to cancel our spring festival, and we hope to resume having events at the Opera House July 31st, but that's it's very unclear on if that will happen. So I guess our overall tourism development program as a whole has been put on hold during this time.
Okay. Anything else? Meg, anything from the hospital that is non-COVID related that you would like to return to?
Well, we'd like to return to having the business we had before COVID, for sure, because like all hospitals, we, especially being small, have been struggling because people just aren't coming to the hospital for services. They're afraid to come. So just trying to reassure people that it's safe to come back to get their services, so we can bring just in general our business back as quickly as possible.
Lee looks like he's thinking about saying something.
He's pondering.
Well, I think if the 10 at the top, in my opinion, had a vital role in helping this region of South Carolina really do some marvelous work. And I think the role of folks like 10 at the top is even more critical now, as we try to figure out how we can get back to some degree of whatever the new normal is going to be. It's not going to be the same as it was before. And for those of us who live in rural areas, that's particularly difficult. We're visionaries in many ways. We're not dumb. Because we're small, sometimes we can move faster on issues than some of the folks in the big cities can. So we do have our advantages, and I think it's a lot of pluses for where we are, but an organization like 10 at the top I would just challenge you to kind of redouble your efforts toward collaboration and keeping us together and helping us realize that we need to help each other throughout all of this, that we like to think that we're brave and we can carry on, and we can, but we can go a lot farther if we go together than if we try to solve all these problems by ourselves. Mm-hmm. The answers to these problems are not always right here in our community, but as they are addressed in other communities and can be shared with the rest of us, we all benefit from that. So, I know it's probably been tough on 10 at the Top to try to keep up the collaborative part of their mission, but we certainly appreciate calls like this and other efforts that you make. And as we all feel more comfortable and are given permission to be out in our communities again together, not just 6 feet apart, whenever that's going to be, mm-hmm. Now's the time to think about how we're going to come out of this better and stronger and better prepared to handle something like this the next time it comes around.
Well, Lee, I appreciate your comments made very much sounding like a former board member. So thank you for that. What I would say, and I'd love if anybody else who's on the call, especially somebody who hasn't talking like Amanda or Dave or some of the others, Tim, want to chime in. But, we've been, it's been very interesting that, because of the move to the virtual world, it is actually, I think, gotten the opportunity for people to be closer in our realm, just by the sense of, instead of having to drive to a place just to be on a call or a meeting, now with the virtual element, we've had probably more, we do a weekly call that's going to be twice this month in June, but we've had folks from all over the region take an hour to be part of those calls that I know if they had to drive to Greenville to be in a in-person meeting probably would not have been able to. So I think we're, at least in the short term, going to figure out how to continue to utilize the virtual opportunities to connect folks and to continue to build relationships across the region. And the listening tours are a critical part of that, because now we're better understanding kind of what some of the challenges are in your communities. I'll open it up if anybody else has a comment, and then Sharon, you can close this out.
Dean, I was just going to say, the virtual Zoom thing has been wonderful for me, because it's very difficult for me to get to Greenville. And so I echo what you were saying. I actually feel more connected with the board and being able to hear what's going on everywhere by having the weekly calls up until this point. And I was also going to tell Lee that prior to the COVID thing, I really feel like, and Michael's on the call, I really feel like we were making some huge strides with the transportation piece. Of course, it's going to take some time. It's not something that's going to happen tomorrow, but I really feel like that was moving along and going really, really well. So I've been excited about that too. So I think 10 at the Top is just an incredible group of people that is just vital. I'll just echo that with Lee, that's just vital, especially during these times.
And Susan, thank you for that. And not to, spoil the ending, but one of the things we're hearing that Michael is already starting to have conversations on is creating a rural mobility task force, because we're hearing that in every single of these calls that we've had. So look for something to be coming out from Michael in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks as we roll on from this. Of how to engage all of our communities around the transportation issue. Because as Rick said earlier, it's always been an issue. It's just not something people necessarily highlight, because they haven't always felt that it's something that can be addressed and fixed. So not to say that it can be fixed quickly, but we think back to Lee's point about the collaboration, that the continuing to build and relate collaborations will help to address how we can work and impact issues like mobility. So with that, Sharon, I'll let you close this out. And again, I want to thank everybody for being with us today. And Sharon, you can let everybody know about how they can get the update and everything else moving forward.
Yep. Thanks for coming, everybody. Appreciate you taking your time out of your day and to let us know what's going on there in Abbeville. We will have a recap within a few days on the website. A video of this call has been recorded, and we'll have that on the website. So tomorrow is the final one in the Pickens County, and then after we have that meeting, then we're gonna kind of distill all of the information that we've received down and try to come up with some common threads and see where we are across the upstate. And then we'll have then we'll get some information out and see where we are at that point with all of the counties, and see what we can do as an upstate, as a region, to address some of these things that we're seeing. So thank you again. Have a great weekend. What is today?
Thursday.
Okay. Have a great
Not
weekend.
that anybody's paying attention to that.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Good to see you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.